Greetings, YouTube. I was actually thinking about working on a video dealing directly with CRT again, critical race theory, when I read something in a thread here on Metafilter that I'd like to quote. The first quote is from The Atlantic. The Republican operatives who dismiss the expositions of critical race theorists and anti-racists in order to define critical race theory and anti-racism, and then attack those definitions, are effectively debating themselves. They have conjured an imagined monster to scare the American people and project themselves as the nation's defenders from that fictitious monster. And that's pretty much what they're doing. Again, as I've said, CRT is the current boogeyman man used to scare white people into doing everything they can to make sure that their children are not indoctrinated by reality. That these people do not want their children taught the reality that their parents and grandparents were and possibly still are racists, and that committed direct, real-world, factually recorded events and acts of racism against the black community that cannot be disputed because we have the police reports, we have the films and the photos and the recordings, and we have the testimonies of the people that committed them and the people that suffered them. These things happened. But there are a lot of parents and grandparents that don't want their children and grandchildren to be taught that, in the hopes that they will continue to perpetuate the white supremacy that they themselves attempted to impose upon the world. There's another passage in here. This is written by a poster on Metafilter called Selena777. It seems like an argument about the point of teaching American history, to increase knowledge of the subject or to distill a sense of patriotism and civic pride. For all the crowing about facts over feelings and prioritizing of education over self-esteem, this is about giving the country a moral participation trophy, because Republicans have a burgeoning demographic problem to fix. Even young people from conservative homes are more liberally social than they prefer. They thought the turning point occurred in college and targeted their attacks there, but they think the Parkland kids scared them and they decided to regroup. Now, K through 12 teachers, usually educated middle-class younger women, another slipping demographic for them, are somehow indoctrinating the youth, even with textbooks evaluated by the Bible Belt. Now, first of all, the very fact that we allow private organizations to create textbooks, and the people involved are not, say, mandatorily required to have master's degrees in education from accredited colleges, disgusts me. We should not allow private organizations to create public textbooks. Those should be written by the federal government, and they should be reviewed by a committee comprised exclusively of people who have either masters or PhDs in an education from accredited colleges. So none of your, Christian colleges that aren't accredited. No Bible Belt influence. No, these should be people who have received the kinds of education that will then give them the position they need, the point of view they need for creating a curriculum that will actually educate our children in knowledge, as opposed to, as what Selena here says, propaganda. Because that is what our history teaching in America is. It's propaganda. And it's not very well done propaganda. Now, I wasn't really into history as a topic when I was in grammar school. I was in school K through 12. History wasn't my thing. I had a voracious reading habit of fiction. I read a lot of fiction. In fact, during the summer breaks in high school, it would not be uncommon for me, like between freshman and sophomore year, between sophomore and junior year, those 2 summers, I think I read a novel every single day. Okay, so I read a lot. But the summer between junior and senior year, I was busy being more socially active with my friends and girlfriends, and then between junior and senior year, I was very active with my girlfriends. And then come after high school, I was then very active with both my girlfriends and with my friends, and I had less time to read. Still read voraciously, but not quite at those same rates. But I wasn't really into history, so I didn't notice when I was in school that the history I was being taught was so bad and so sparse. We never got to the 21st century. Seriously. I mean, I think we might have touched on specific topics, like we might, this very narrow thing, but as far as understanding the full scope of of the history of America, we never got past the Civil War. And then it was very, very, thin. It was very all surface, no texture. Okay, there was nothing depth in there for that discussions of the Civil War. We did not discuss the racism. We did not discuss it, the white supremacy, defending the institution of slavery. We didn't discuss that, and these are things that we should be discussing. Now, obviously, they should be aimed at the age-appropriate levels, and the people in charge of these things should, again, have degrees in education so that they can target the kids and have them understand things in a manner that they will be able to comprehend, but it should be made sure that they understand things. And I didn't have any understanding of world history. I mean, the amount of gaps in our teaching of history, world history, American history. After high school, and I began to really teach myself about the world, I came to understand how crappy our system is, and that most teachers were not there to educate, they were in there to punch a time clock. Maybe they entered the educational field with high hopes, but a lot of them had had that beaten out of them, and they were just collecting a paycheck. We had 220 faculty members at my school, and maybe 20 or 30 of them were teachers, and the rest of them were just there hitting a time clock, and it was depressing. And I figured that out when I was a senior in high school, and it just got worse as I began to understand history and science and the world around me more and more as time went on. And just, in my opinion, of the American education system has just gotten worse as the decades have passed, which is saying something because it wasn't very good to start with. Republicans are scared. They know that in a free and fair system where everyone could cast a vote and where there was no gerrymandering, and everyone could have access to the polls and all the information they needed, and children were properly educated, the Republican Party would disappear. It would just vanish, because socially, Americans are far more liberal than the Republicans would have you believe. And politically, they are still more liberal than the Republicans would have you believe. But they've done everything in their power to concentrate the white supremacists under their sphere of control to have an outsized influence on the world at large. It's apartheid in action. And unless we destroy the gerrymandering system that exists, and unless we make sure our students are properly educated, unless we make sure we take away the reins of control from the Republican Party, this is going to continue. Because the only way they can hold on to power is by narrowing those people who have access to the polls and making sure that more white people who believe in white supremacy end up there than people that don't believe in white supremacy. Which means marginalizing folks like me who vote liberally, progressively, and making sure that as many brown people and black people don't get to the polls at all. So CRT is the latest boogeyman, but it's part of a long history. And these two passages I've just read help demonstrate that, and they do it eloquently. So what are we going to do about it? Republicans scared. They'll lie, cheat, poison, maim, and kill in an effort to maintain power. So what do we do? I don't have an answer. And there are too many white people who are fighting against me to think that even my voice is going to have the greatest impact, because it isn't. But I'm going to keep trying. And I'm going to keep voting. And I'm going to keep telling people that, you know something, the system that you're supporting is racist. Always has been racist. And unless we change it, it will remain racist. And if you're not a racist, it's your job to fight it. And if you are a racist, fuck you all day long.